This is code.org, and let's see. We got the crops class has instance variables for a 1D array of crops and a 1D array containing the yield of each crop in hectograms. All right, so let's keep in mind what that means. This is an instance variable, types and yields. We call it an instance variable because it's only going to be within when we instantiate a class. So an object has access to it, but normally outside of the class, it's not accessible, especially if they're private, of course. All right, that being said, in the crops.java method, has at least should return true if at least one value in the yields array is greater than its parameter value defined in the method as at least. Woo, that's a lot of stuff. So what they're saying, let's find this method, has at least. Now what should this do? It should return true if any of the values in crops are more than it. So if any of the crops are larger than whatever number we give this method, it should say true. Any of them. So maybe only 1 out of 6 are. That's fine. If any of them are larger, it should return true. The only way this should return false is if it goes through that list, goes through the array and says, yep, none of these are larger than this number. So any value, one value is sufficient. All right. That being said, how can we do this? Well, let's see. They're going to give us a hint, I guess. Transverse the yields array. And that's a fancy way for saying, guys, go through, right? Travel through. Jump to each index. I just bounced up and down to show jumping, and you can't see that. But, I'll let you know. Transverse the yields array and check if the current value is greater than or equal to value to find. All right. I'm going to grab this array just for reference. And I'm just going to do Control-C. You could also right-click, or if you're on a Mac, Command-click, copy, and then I'm going to throw it down here. Again, this is just for reference. I want to be able to see this while I'm talking about it. So here we are. They were asking us to go through this entire array. So right away, I know I need a for loop, right? And we've seen these a few times. If you're not sure, you're not super confident in for loops, use your resources. Remember in part 1 of this lesson, or in earlier parts of this lesson, depending on where you're at, we have an example right here, right? We have a ton of examples. Programmers reference all the time other code. I'm going to hit copy. Well, I don't want to make a tiny little error and get frustrated on this one, I guess. So I'm just going to copy that over, walk back over to here, and by walk I mean click back, and here, and I'm going to paste it. Because that's basically what I want to do. Paste. All right? And now I'm going to not forget to put the other bracket. Now, I could type this as well, and I should get to know it, but I want to point out, use your resources, students. All right, now, length. What do I want to walk through? What I want to walk through is has at least is going to be looking at the yields, right? This is a number array. We can see it's an int. That means I'm going to write down here, what I want to check the whole thing is yields. Bam. So now, length of yields for our current array is 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Okay? The length is 5. That is not the last index, right? Because we totally get arrays. They're even confusing, and we just know them by heart now. Okay, maybe not. But here's the indexes. 0, 1, 2, 3, 4. There are 5 indexes, but we start at 0. So that's the first index, second index, third index, fourth index, fifth index. There's 5 items, 0 to 4, 4 being the last index, which is why we have less than. Index plus plus means go up by 1 each time. So in summary, guys, what is this doing? We're saying, hey, start at 0. Make sure that we never go above the end of the array. We don't want to break out of this and cause an error. But plus plus means go up by 1 each time. If it's better for you, if it makes more sense to write index equals index plus 1, that's the identical to the plus plus. All we're saying is get the old value. Index has a new value. What's its new value? It's old value, but you got to add 1 to it. That's all index plus plus means. Okay? All right, that being said, so now we can loop through the array. It starts with 0, and it says 0 is less than the length, and we don't add 1 until the next time around, which is perfect. Now, we want to check if it's greater. So that's a conditional. So if if yields, right? And then what index? Well, index. So if yields.index is greater than what value? Whatever value is passed. So the name of the value that's passed, the name of our parameter here, the name of what will be used for the argument, parameter or argument are often used interchangeably, is value to find, okay? So now we're checking. Now what should happen if I find a single value? If I find one value that is larger, I need to end. And how do I end a method? I return. But I'll return true, because I know then, hey, stop looping, stop everything, return. And guys, once you return, it's done looping. It's done doing any work. You go back to here, and wherever you had that method print or called right here is where it goes back to. And then it would run any other code beneath this if we had it. But once you return, it's over. Now, I want you to pay attention to that because the distinction here is let's say I put in 1 billion. Well, none of these numbers are greater than 1 billion, right? So it doesn't have a number that is greater than that. Therefore, it goes through this entire loop. It starts with 0, it looks at this first thing, it says, is this larger than 1 billion, which would be here. False, right? So since this is not true, since the if isn't true, it cannot drop inside of it. It just goes beneath, loops back around. It says I was at index 0. All right, well, I have to add 1 each time. 0 plus 1 is 1. Hey, is 1 less than the length of this array? No, the length is 5. So I can keep going. And then it looks at the next thing. Same thing. False. It's not bigger. Bloop, bloop. Let's go up by 1. Okay, I'm now at index 2. Is 2 is 2 still less? Whoops. I think I just fixed that. But is 2 still less than 5? Yes, 2 is less than 5. This is still valid. So I'm allowed to keep running this loop. I then checked index 2. Okay, index 2 is greater. No, that's false. So I don't drop inside. I drop beneath. Bam. All right, go up again. Index 3, right? 2 plus 1 is 3. Is 3 still less than the length? Yes. Yes, so the index works. Blum, blum, blum. All the way through, right? The reason we want to return false instantly is if we find a greater value, we know we're good. Or true instantly is if we find a greater value, we're good. We don't need to check these other values. It no longer matters because we only need 1. And the reason we only return false at the end down here is because I know this loop is going to keep running until it says, all right, once we get to the 4th index and go through it, it's going to come back up and say, all right, I need to add 1 to index. So what was the old value? 4. 4 plus 1 is shockingly 5, right? Is 5 less than the length, less than 5? No, that is false, which means our loop now, this part of it's done. It says, oh, okay, I'm done with my for loop, blop, and it runs the next line and it returns false, which is great. It should only return false if we go through every value and none of them are less or none of them are greater. All right, let me get rid of all of this and let's check this out. So it should return true. And if you're dying to know, because no values are greater than 600,000. Oh, no, because a value is greater than 600,000. But let's make this 6 billion or 6 million. And false. Perfect. Pretty cool. Test that. I changed it back to the original because they didn't ask us to do that. Cool. Onward.